Thor is directed by Kenneth Branagh and stars Chris Hemsworth, Natalie Portman, Tom Hiddleston, Idris Elba, Anthony Hopkins, and Stellan Skarsgård. The film was budgeted at 150 million and grossed 449.3 million. It was the fourth Marvel film in the MCU, and his music was composed by Patrick Doyle. The story goes as Thor. He's the son of Odin. He's about to become king of Asgard, but all of a sudden, the first giants turn up, trying to steal a casket which their power drew from. But it was obstructed, and the plans were obstructed, and they were later killed by the destroyer. Thor, Loki, and Odin come to the artifact room. They come across the destruction from the destroyer made and killed and the deaths of the first giants. And Thor sees this as an act of war, and he wanted to go to Odin and teach him a lesson. Odin disagrees, and because he's not king, he still has power over Thor. And tells Thor there's still a truce, even though the Odins came, they ultimately died. There wasn't that many to start a war. But Thor ultimately goes against his father's wishes, goes to Jotunheim, and a battle ensues. And after that battle, when Odin saves Thor, his friends and his brother Loki, he banishes Thor because of his recklessness and arrogance. And he throws Mjolnir, another far from Thor, which teach him a lesson. The film is a story about a father and his sons, and if you take this aspect of Odin and Thor, you see the dynamic as he's the oldest son. He's arrogant and he's reckless, and Odin is his father, trying to teach him how to be a great king when he passes on. But when Thor ultimately betrays his father's wishes, he casts him out and sends to Earth. As for Odin and Loki was the youngest, but later to be known he was the adopted son of Odin. Odin took Loki as a child, and Loki was a first giant as a baby, but he was too small and he was left there to die. So Odin saved his life and ultimately used Loki as a bargaining chip to be an endless peace between the Asgardians and the Jotuns in Jotunheim. This movie is also a character development of Thor, as he is sent to Earth and learns his humility and mature as a person. I think the strength of the film is the soundtrack. The soundtrack brings the film a sense of epicness. Now, Patrick Doyle did the soundtrack for the first Thor film, and he also did the soundtrack for Harry Potter, The Goblet of Fire, and that was a big scale film as well. He managed to give that sensibility to the Marvel character, and not just the big bombastic epic, in terms of epic and battle scenes. He also made it subtle for scenes for Thor's banishment and Loki's knowledge of his true heritage. And the end credit scenes, it gives you a sense of fantastical and wonder, which is harkens to Hans Zimmer's score of Man of Steel. Another strength of the film is Kenneth Branagh as the director. He managed to make a big movie and reduce a big character and reduce it to but also kept a compelling story between the father and his sons, and Loki's resentment towards Thor was sent to the throne. And that deserves a lot of credit, because at the time, Thor, he was not a major character for Marvel, same as Iron Man and probably to the next Hulk. And he has this problem because he's like a god. How can you make him relatable? So the father banishing a character was really smart, because he made it into our level, and you see him turning to be more mature and much more humble as a character. Another strength is the cast. I think Marvel has a good knack of picking talent, especially its lead actors. Chris Hemsworth is really good as a character. He's charismatic in a sense that you believe him of him being arrogant and really cocky, but you also believe him as he tries to get his hammer, and the hammer does not pick up as he sees it. You see the arrogance, confusion, despair, and then humbleness, all in that scene, and he plays that well. Especially after if he finds out, he looks up and you see the anger and despair in that scene. Tom Hiddleston, he is the standout actor, and Loki is a standout character. As much as it's a Thor film, you also see Loki's turn to villainy, and you also see the sadness and resentment he brings towards Thor, and that's great acting. I think having a stage actor has that presence to be even outshine Chris Hemsworth at times is remarkable. And lastly is Anthony Hopkins. He gives that sense of grandeur, a gravitas to the film, especially the scene when he banishes Thor. The scene was actually ad-libbed, like this part when he shouted at Loki was unexpected from both of the actors, Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston, but it still played a part and made it more impactful. And like he has this sense of presence to Anthony Hopkins, so it is a gem to have him as an actor in the film. The comedy of the film is also a strong point. You see, when Thor goes into Earth, he's a fish out of water, so it really played it into comic relief. And the big example is when he goes to the pet store and he says he needs a horse in the film, and the shop owner is like looking at him, this guy mental, and he's a place of comic relief. Another personal favorite is when Volstagg and Fandor were like arguing. Roger was saying everything, and he's complaining to Volstagg, but Volstagg's basically eating like there's no tomorrow, and that really plays the comic relief. Another strength of the film is also the villain's turn. Now you see Loki as the second born, and he always wants to get his father's approval. So he does this scheme of taking the king of Jotunheim and bringing him into Asgard to kill Odin. But he kills Laufey, the king of Jotunheim, to prove a point. And that actually takes Asgard as account to start war with the Jotuns. But his plan was flawed because Thor managed to regain his power and come back to Asgard. And you see the dynamic between the two brothers fighting, which is also good strength. But back to the villainy, when your Odin saves Thor and Loki from the brotherly squabble, you see Loki say he could have done all of this to prove as a worthy son, and Odin says no. That changed Loki. That was a major turning point for Loki, and you see from Tom Hiddleston's face, like, that's nothing I can do, so he falls into the abyss. For weaknesses of the film, I think it's the CGI, and I think it's the green screen, especially. You can easily tell what is in green screen and what's not. It's noticeable. It's not as bad as like the Star Wars prequels, but it's pretty noticeable. Another weakness is the Dutch angles. Now, I like it with Dutch angles if one character is standing above another character to show a certain kind of power, but in the sense of the Dutch angles, it's used overly too much. It's like a J.J. Abrams directing a film with his lens flares. It's so much it kind of gets distracting, and sometimes I feel like twisting my neck like this to see the proper view of the film, and it really brings you out of the film. Another problem I had with the film is the action scenes in the first battle when Odin was fighting Loki and when Thor was fighting Loki after the battle after. Now, both of those battles were set in the dark, so I think it was to cover up the CGI, like minimize the most use of CGI, but my issue is that you can't see the fighting. It is like you can't really see them fighting. You just see people probably shoving each other around, maybe because it's dark. And in terms of action, there wasn't that much. And in terms of a comic book movie, comic book movies do live off action. They go hand in hand, and you don't see the raw power of Thor that much. You don't see that much. On after the first battle Thor had with the Odins, and when Thor beats the Destroyer, but that is it. You don't really, and after the next fight, it was basically mostly hand-to-hand combat. So you don't really see the God of Thunder being in a God of Thunder that much. But also, problem, I think it's a personal problem when Idris Elba was casted, and it's not because of his race. Well, like it is because of his race, but he hired a black guy to be a doorman. I was like, really? So he basically opens the door, allows people in, and closes the door. You should have done a little bit more in terms of the actor. And I was like, all for diversity, but you hired a black man to be Alfred, the barman, basically. And that's my big nitpick of the film. That's like the major issue. Like, oh, it's Idris Elba. He's a doorman. Really, you can do a lot better. Overall, the film is the total package because it has a rich story. Because it has a lot of character development, I can let go a bit of the action, but it is kind of necessary. You have the God of Thunder at least show his full potential of the film, and that was kind of a set down. But overall, the film was a solid film. Because of the lack of action, I give the film a 7.8. It is the teething of the Marvel. Like it shows it's like the Phase 4 of Marvel films, how much limitations they had, and the budget constraints they had with it, with a big character. But I think they pulled it off really quite well. Kind of a little nitpicks here and there, but it didn't really take me out of the film. The film could have gone as like really serious as Lord of the Rings or really cheesy, but managed to keep that balance, which was really good. And I give kudos to Kenneth Branagh. Well, guys, that's the end of the review. Click like and subscribe, share with friends, comment in the comment section, and this is Jeremiah.